Hello and welcome to the Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm looking at the 2011 to 2015 series Aquaman, part of DC's The New 52. You were all asking for that, right? If you lived through the double aughts like Old Man Ramsey did, then you might remember G4 and maybe Attack of the Show and their constant jokes at Aquaman's expense. Or maybe you too laughed at the premise of Entourage being that they were attempting to make someone popular by getting them cast as Aquaman. Like anyone would ever get popular by playing Aquaman. I'm just kidding, Mr. Momoa. Please don't kill me with your terrifying arms. I loved you on Stargate Atlantis. But I mean, I get it. There's a lot to make fun of with Fishman Arthur Curry, son of a lighthouse keeper named Thomas Curry and a former Queen of Atlantis named, of all things, Atlanta. You get it. After all, he's an obvious ripoff of Marvel's Namor the Submariner, who, yes, came first, but in a much more gaudy bright orange costume and with the ability to fly replaced by an ability to talk to fish. Apparently it makes a v sound. I mean, I feel more like I'm making a joke than describing an actual character that has existed for 80 years now. But despite all of that, Aquaman has managed to have a lasting appeal to fans for all that time, eventually leading to him, and his much more awesome wife Mara, getting a big revamp during Blackest Night and Brightest Day. Possibly inspired by the work they did there, writer Jeff Johns and artist Ivan Reis would continue working with the character as the DC universe rebooted into a new continuity with the New 52 and continued trying to update the character, his supporting cast, villains, and universe, and make them interesting for a new generation of readers. So let's just see how they intended to do that and take this away. The comic opens with a daring daylight robbery as some masked thieves with assault rifles attempt to outrun the police in their stolen armored car like this is the beginning of RoboCop or something. The original RoboCop, not the remake, obviously. But a mysterious figure shows up to stop them, and that figure turns out to be none other than... the Trench? I thought that was Aquaman. But whatever, comic, I guess you know better than I do. Oh no, wait, that is Aquaman. I'm not crazy. Maybe you could have been a little clearer about how that was a story title and not a character name, comic, but oh well. I like how this one crook is laughing about his appearance here. Johns leans fully into the concept of Aquaman as a joke, as just some guy who talks to fish, and he's dismissed by just about everybody. The crooks aren't scared of him, the cops are more embarrassed for his help than they're grateful, the people in this restaurant he visits afterward find him an amusing curiosity. This reporter says Aquaman is more of a punchline than a superhero. The disrespect for him goes so far that everyone even seems to refuse to learn Mara's name and repeatedly refer to her as Aquawoman. And hey look, you can diss Whitefish over there as much as you want, but Mara is a treasure. Like this bit later where she tries to go into town to go shopping and not knowing the customs of the surface world since, you know, she hasn't lived there, gets herself in some trouble. That happens from her having to deal with the overly handsy, clearly sexist a-hole that manages the local store trying to get too friendly with the Queen of Atlantis. And after he persists, despite Mara repeatedly asking him to stop, she simply breaks his arm. Mara's the best. We will come to learn that for the New 52, Johns keeps much of her story established in Brightest Day intact, including the whole being from Jebul or Jebel or whatever, a forgotten land locked inside the Bermuda Triangle, and the fact that she was raised as an assassin with the intent to kill the King of Atlantis, but once she actually got the chance, she fell in love with him instead. But I mean, who wouldn't fall for the whole Free Willy thing he's doing when she first meets him, am I right? Wait, that sounds bad. You know what I mean. Despite all the disrespect he gets, Aquaman is still called in to help with a mysterious attack on the docks in a nearby town, where he discovers the perpetrators are these zombie-like piranha men that are so hungry they apparently stop in the middle of battle to eat their own dead. But not everyone they come across is being eaten by them, as Aquaman reveals they're trapping some in weird clamshell things, including this good dog that Arthur and Mira will later adopt and still later I guess name Salty. Like Salty the Sea Dog. You get it. But I'm gonna call him Aquadog, obviously. Aquaman follows the creatures back to their home to discover they're living inside a crashed ancient Atlantean ship deep inside an oceanic trench at the bottom of the ocean. Which makes me really wish that someone would write an Aquaman vs. the Meg crossover. Anyway, they're bringing back live people as food for their queen, and conveniently they've attached all those clam cocoons to the top of the ship. So Aquaman and Mera are able to just literally raise the roof back to the surface, while Aquaman seals the creatures, which will be further referred to as the trench, inside their trench by setting off an undersea volcanic eruption. We move on to the New 52 appearance of Black Manta, who's busy killing some people, starting with this woman, so he can get some kind of trinket from her and further threatens to kill her entire family. Man, Manta's a dick. This poor woman is Kahina the Seer, who was once part of a group called The Others, that will get their own spin-off series that I'll cover next, so I'll talk about them there. But 6 years ago, that whole group was working with Aquaman to find 6 relics of Atlantis made by Atlan, the first king of Atlantis. Arthur's not too impressed by the dead king, as they call him, who apparently foolishly died looking for his family after choosing to sink Atlantis of his own accord. We'll learn later that he was actually a good king hoping for peace, but was betrayed by his brother, who killed Atlan's family and claimed his throne, and in retaliation, Atlan ended up going off the deep end and even went so far as to sink the entire island. We'll also learn that Atlantis actually consisted of 7 different kingdoms before it sank, and some of those kingdoms split off to form other communities underwater that included the Jebelians trapped in Jebel, but also includes the Trench. It also includes some other kingdoms vaguely hinted at, who we are promised we'll be seeing more of in the future, but since that plot point doesn't start until what ends up being Jon's last arc, that never actually happens. Anyway, Aquaprince and the others gathered the dead king's relics to stop Manta from getting his hands on them, though I'm still actually unclear as to why Manta wanted them. Probably something to do with him hating Aquaman, since that's his only motivation in these comics. It all starts when Aquaman was a young lad living with his dad in the lighthouse on Amnesty Bay. He began exhibiting weird water powers, and not knowing what to do with him, Aquadad took his son to a scientist named Stephen Shin, who spent his life studying Arthur and trying to figure out how his Atlantean physiology worked. But Shin also wanted compensation for his work and tried to go public, but Arthur's papa didn't like that and pulled everything from Shin, leaving the scientist to be mocked by the scientific community and become a laughingstock. So Shin hired a treasure hunter to get a sample of Arthur's blood so he could prove everything he said was true. But Thomas tried to protect his son from the treasure hunter, which led to him having a heart attack and dying a few days later. In a rage, blaming the treasure hunter for his death, Aquaman then went and tried to kill that treasure hunter, only to accidentally kill the treasure hunter's father instead. And of course, that treasure hunter is Black Manta. So basically, both Aquaman and Manta blame each other for the death of the other's father, and so are locked into an eternal struggle because of it. I gotta say though, this whole attempt to make a character more interesting by giving them some dark past secret or making them a more brutal character is something the New 52 does a lot, with varying degrees of success. But I really dislike it here in particular, where it basically gives the characters the dynamic of a minor criminal being plagued by a law enforcement officer who has committed a demonstrably worse crime, but is forgiven for his crime and still considered the hero between the two because, I don't really know why. Because he's white? Jon's not so deftly sidesteps this analogy by having Manta just be unquestionably villainous and psychotically antisocial, while all the side characters, which conveniently suddenly consist of various minorities, all tell us about how much Arthur has changed for the better, supposedly. Like in how he demands Mera stay behind because real men solve their own problems, or how he's shouting, "Black Manta dies now!" Yeah, he's definitely improved. Manta's goal in the now is to find a secret 7th treasure of the dead king, which turns out to be another trident, like the one Aquaman already has. But this one's better, because it's more phallic. He finds it, but with the help of Mera and the others, they all manage to stop Manta and give Aquaman the chance to prove he's the better man by not killing his enemy when he has the chance. That's how that works, I guess. Before the storyline ends, we see Manta handing off the dead king's spear to some Atlanteans, which leads us into our next arc. Now this whole time, the mere existence of Atlantis has been in question, with most people thinking the entire city is fictional and Aquaman delusional. In fact, in the Flashback Zero issue, even Aquaman begins to doubt its existence until he meets this suspicious looking dude named Vulko, who was a faithful servant to Arthur's Atlantean mama, Atlanta, before she was mysteriously murdered, and Vulko takes Fishboy to his ancestral home under the sea, finally revealing the Lost Kingdom to the readers. Vulko also reveals Aquaman has an Aqua half-bro, Orm, and back in the present, Aquaman meets with him to see what's going on with the whole Dead King Trident thing in Black Manta. Orm, the Ocean Master, and yes, that's really his name, assures Aquaman that Atlantis had no part in what happened with Manta and has no interest in the surface world. But then, a Navy boat test firing some missiles unexpectedly finds itself firing those missiles at Atlantis, leading Orm to immediately do what he just said he wouldn't do, and he attacks the US, sending massive tidal waves crashing against the East Coast, before they then invade the area hit the hardest in an invasion plan that Arthur apparently came up with himself during his time as king, before he abdicated the throne to his half-bro. This puts Arthur at odds with his counterparts in the Justice League as he attempts to stand between the two sides of the conflict, very literally placing himself between defending Atlantis and protecting the surface world, visually reflecting his primary character arc for this story, belonging to neither the surface world or Atlantis, but wanting to do what is best for both. But Ocean Master Orm proves his worthiness as a villain by blasting the Justice League with lightning, as his crown can apparently control the ocean and his trident is capable of controlling the weather, and he banishes the heroes to underneath the waves, where they are apparently then captured by the Trench. Aquaman rescues the heroes and then brings the fight back to Orm. At this point, it seems clear to Aquaman that despite his claims, Orm really was behind Black Manta, but when we return to the surface, we find Orm actually fighting against the Trench, unsure of what the creatures even are. So there really was another clever mastermind behind it all, and we finally learned that it was that super suspicious guy Vulko? What? The super suspicious guy was a bad guy all along? No, surely not. Okay, if you've been reading Aquaman comics for years, which no you haven't, then you might be surprised because Vulko here is the New 52 reimagining of a longtime Aqua ally. So I'm sure for those like 3 people, this was a serious dun 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 moment. Realizing Vulko's betrayal, Aquaman focuses on getting Ocean Master to stop his attack, and when explaining the true culprit doesn't end it, he instead takes the throne of Atlantis back and declares himself king once again. Angrily. Just look at that drama. You know what that says to me? That says, YouTube thumbnail, oh yeah. With Arthur kingly once again, Vulko reveals that the whole reason he orchestrated this war between Atlantis and the surface in the first place was to get Arthur to do exactly what he just did, believing him to be the one true king for Atlantis. Aquaman is understandably not happy with him. We also learn here that the Dead King Scepter is somehow able to control the Trench, so Aquaman takes it up and uses it to force the Trench back into the water. Orm then goes to Surface World Prison, to Belle Reve in fact, while Vulko goes to Atlantean Jail, and with balance somewhat tentatively restored, we move on to our next story. Here we see Aquaman struggling to feel comfortable with filling his seat, and again Johns finds the opportunity to present that metaphor literally for us. He struggles with controlling his royal guard, led and represented by Merc, as they gather up Atlantean weapons lost during the previous story that have fallen into the hands of humans from the surface world. He struggles with how to work with the New 52 reimagining of Tula, who here is the leader of the Drift, an elite group of Atlantean warriors that rather uniquely are willing to go onto the surface. She also happens to be Orm's half-sister on their father's side, making her basically Aquaman's half-brother's half-sister. So, family. Arthur also is unable to decide what to do about Vulko, promising only that justice will come, you know, soon-ish. and can't give strong enough reassurances to his subjects about the justice similarly facing Orm, who may not be as protected from severe penalty as Amanda Waller initially promised. Things only get worse as a villain named the Scavenger shows up, turning out to be the one recovering the Atlantean weapons. All these problems are only compounded by the fact that Aquaman chose to do the man thing and go it alone, leaving his better half Mera on the surface. Okay, really, she's the one who chooses to stay behind, but thankfully she's still pulled into the story when some weird frozen guy claiming to be the true king of Atlantis shows up and decides he's taking Mera home to Jabal, which is apparently only reachable by wrecking a ship in the Bermuda Triangle. Mera blasts Froyo here away and dives in first, returning to her home and apparently her ex, this guy she was once promised to in marriage. Thankfully, that never happened. But the Jabellians end up siding against Mera and Aquaman and working for the dead king. But before the super couple can solve that problem, they have to deal with Scavenger having found Atlantis thanks to a tracking device he planted on an injured Atlantean that Arthur and Merc had rescued from one of Scavenger's ships earlier. Arthur takes command of Topo, a giant ancient sea monster that's normally too intelligent for him to control, and forces it to do his bidding, destroying Scavenger's fleet. But the strain breaks Aquaman's brain and he passes out for 6 months, which I'm pretty sure is mostly just meant to explain his disappearance during Forever Evil. He returns with a throwback beard and the Dead King scepter to lead the Trench into battle against the Frozen Throne, and wins the day by throwing the Dead King and his scepter into an underwater volcano. With Atlantis freed from Atlan and the Jabellians, Aquaman returns to his throne, this time finally joined by Mera. Though wisely she agrees only on the condition that he shaves. Good call, Mera. Writer Jeff Parker then takes over and his new story focuses on this archaeologist, Dr. Evans, who steals Aquaman's trident while Aquaman is at a high school reunion. No, really, a high school reunion. Despite Arthur not having finished high school, having left to become the Fish King at age 16, and then uses it to power up a device found at some ancient dig site. You know, typical comic book irresponsible scientist stuff. This unleashes a horde of demons because, of course it does, and they can all speak English, because of course they can. Not only that, they know English so well that they were able to trick Evans into believing that one word on a tablet he found was a completely different word. Which we know because the monsters pause in their destruction to explain this to us. Because people always just narrate everything they're doing and thinking and planning. I know I do, and I know everyone in Parker's run will. It's great. Honestly, I appreciate that Johns had the foresight to give the Trench their own language, which he had a character describe as being like seal sounds, maybe some kind of echolocation, which makes sense for creatures that live in the dark underwater. But that is obviously too much work and thought to bother putting into the comic at this point. The monsters run amok, unleashing Hercules, who has been trapped for ages, with them. This leads the story to conclude with a double crossover, first between Aquaman and Wonder Woman, and then between Mera and Wonder Woman, which, not gonna lie, is a team up I could live with seeing more of. Instead, we move on to a team up between Swamp Thing and Aquaman, as both of their new 52 titles have a crossover because at this point, sure, why not, I guess. Aquaman also finds himself dealing with an underwater research base manned by a bunch of scientists that include Stephen Shin, since primarily they want to study Atlantis and he's the foremost expert. And now that Atlantis has attacked, people actually believe him when he says it. One of the lab's workers, a diver named Coombs, is horribly maimed by sharks during a dive, and another scientist at the lab experiments on him, and he's kind of Indominus Rex together from various sea life, including the remains of an ancient sea monster that once protected Atlantis, but recently went insane and Aquaman was forced to kill it. Now calling himself the Chimera, the Monster Man is able to control sea life like Aquaman, even overriding Arthur's own telepathy, and also able to shapeshift and use abilities from all the various sea life DNA that has gone into him. He's finally defeated in an explosion, and though he's revealed to still be alive afterward, we thankfully don't see him again in this series. With that problem out of the way, Aquaman is able to focus on a group of Atlanteans trying to overthrow the government, as they blame a recent spate of seaquakes on his half-human ancestry. To get to the bottom of this, Arthur has Dr. Shin, Dr. Evans, and Volko, all of whom are somehow still alive and somehow still characters, come to Atlantis and research its past. They discover that Atlantis is essentially protected by a field made of the energy of past dead kings, and his half-human side is, in fact, making that field unstable. Which wouldn't happen if his direct predecessor, Queen Atlanta, was part of the field, but gasp, she's not, because further gasp, she's not dead. Dun dun dun. Arthur ends up chasing her down through more portals that are totally not Stargates, like the one Evans opened in the first arc of Parker's Run, where he discovers she's been living in totally not the Savage Land with a bunch of other people who fled Atlantis in their tyranny and racism. Atlanta refuses to believe Arthur is really her son, believing him to be dead, and refuses to listen to them, though eventually after lots of unnecessary fighting, she decides to give him some talisman that I guess will bring an end to the Seaquakes. So yay. Once again, it's time to move on to a new writer as Cullen Bunn takes over with a story that sees Aquaman on the run from Mera in Atlantis. It seems some ancient evil sorcerers from pre-sunken Atlantis days have been hiding out in another dimension, but they also trapped a bunch of innocent civilians there as well. Aquaman wants to stop the sorcerers who are threatening Atlantis with its destruction, but also wants to find a way to protect the civilians. Unfortunately, the Atlanteans, led by Mera, see this as a betrayal. Left to fend for himself, Arthur seeks help from Poseidon, god of the sea and storm, to get yet another trident that gives him power over lightning and stuff so he can look super cool. Finally having enough, he returns to Mera, sneaking into her room late at night, a totally normal thing to do, to try and simply talk to her and see if he can determine why she won't trust him anymore. They end up sleeping together, and then in the morning she reveals that for a long time now she hasn't been Mera at all. She's Mera's sister, Siren. Whoa, what? Slow your roll there, comic. Man, how many times do we have to have this exact rapey sexual assault situation in comics? I think it's that men kind of like this concept as a sort of get out of jail free card for cheating on their spouses, but it's pretty messed up in a lot of ways, and I for one could go for not seeing it used as a plot point anymore. But anyway, Siren has been holding Mera captive this whole time, while she used her magic to appear as Mera and take control of Atlantis to lead it against Arthur, since she is working for the secret sect of sorcerers. Mera ends up getting herself free because she was apparently able to do that at any time. Well, you know, except for before her evil sister had sex with her husband while posing as her, and takes out Siren faster than you can say not Mera in The Fishman. Aquaman then sacrifices his Poseidon powers to merge the world of the sorcerers with the real world in a safe way, I guess, as opposed to the destructive way that was occurring before, and in doing so spares the lives of the refugees. For the final volume, we get another writer in Dan Abnett, who will continue writing the series for the DC Rebirth, so more than the last volume of this series, this is really the first volume of that series, but whatever. In order to better facilitate relations between Atlantis and the rest of the world, and by the rest of the world I guess I mean the USA, Aquaman establishes an Atlantean embassy in Amnesty Bay called Spindrift Station. He appoints Mera to be in charge of it, and for PR purposes, she takes to calling herself Aquawoman and changes clothes from her awesome mermaid suit to a Rule 63 Aquaman outfit, which does not look nearly as good as they tried to sell it to us as looking. I guess Aquaman's just super into himself. He would be. Mera makes Burke head of security, and Garth, one of the previous Aqualads in the pre-New 52 era, who actually made his first New 52 appearance in the previous volume as an Atlantean Arthur didn't know, is appointed here as Spindrift's head of communications. To give himself more superheroing time, Arthur also appoints Tula as regent of Atlantis, and I love how they're being all, "That's so progressive," while also getting all male gazy on Tula and a couple other women playing beach volleyball here, apparently completely unaware of the irony. We can't be sexist, we're literally patting ourselves on the back for being progressive. That's not how that works. The plot here mainly involves some crazy water monster that can travel through a sort of alternate dimension of water to come out of any amount of water anywhere to kill people, even a tiny cup of water in a locked room. Investigating this mystery are two FBI agents named Irving and Ajar, two extremely dopey characters that seem to be here primarily as comic relief, despite Abnett having basically everyone, even Aquaman, pretty constantly cracking jokes. But even in that atmosphere, this pair are just here to be wacky and weird, to the point that you can practically hear the weird clown music that plays under the cop duo in Halloween 5 every time this pair is on the page. They track down the weird dead water monster to discover he was once a man who worked for Scavenger, that villain from earlier who is apparently still alive, and after a short fight with him, Dead Water ends up committing suicide by Aqua Trident. That's all there is to Abnett's run on the series, but again, this was mostly just set up for Rebirth, which I guess I'll probably get to someday, but for now, let's get to the breakdown. Johns does a great job overall of updating the Aquaman universe for the modern day, making the characters more familiar and making their struggles more believable to a modern audience. Not that there aren't problems with his run, like the fact that he updates Arthur in the same way he updates all his characters, by giving him some dark past slowly revealed to us in played out flashbacks, showing him to not be such a great guy after all, and so he must struggle every day to be better. This creates a bit of a tendency for his stories to drag as well, and beyond Mera, we don't get much development of side characters during his run. But it's still vastly superior to the volumes that follow, all of which suffer from plenty of bad writing and half-baked ideas that keep it from truly being interesting. And what little there is that is interesting in those arcs is made to feel all the more pointless by DC's continued insistence during the New 52 of abandoning superhero plotlines almost as soon as they're put down on page. I'm looking at you, Green Arrow comic. On a positive note, no matter who the creative team, Mera is consistently fantastic, and I found for most of the series that I wished I was reading a comic just about her. And it's probably not a good sign when you'd prefer to be reading a comic about a side character over your title character, but I'm still giving this a series recommendation level of high. While the entire second half has very little worth paying attention to, for the most part this is still a pretty strong Aquaman series that really provides a lot to draw you into the world of its main character. The collected editions get 3 Aquaman Tridents, 1 Atlantis Crest, and 4 Mera's Tiaras. That's as always from bad to good, but we're starting out alright here and only going up. Whatever I think of the stories, pretty much all the collections are pretty good, as you can see by this breakdown. The shortest volume here is Volume 8, with only 5 issues, including one that's a DC Rebirth preview, with Volumes 1 and 2 being each just slightly longer, and all 3 having a pretty small amount of bonuses. Volume 3 is 7 issues with several pages of bonus covers and sketches, and the remaining volumes are 8 issues or longer and are packed with alternate covers, sketch art, and other bonuses. There's also an alternate version of Volume 3 released with a new cover for the release of the Aquaman movie, but it's all basically the exact same content, so I'm not giving any extra rewards for that. Thanks everybody for watching. Sorry this is so long. I seriously cut out so much I wanted to talk about just to get it this short. Part of that will be covered in next week's Aquaman and the others, and I'll probably have to go back over at least Throne of Atlantis and a deeper dive at some point in the future. Thank you everyone for continuing to support the channel and stick around even while I'm failing to update. Sorry about that, seriously. Make sure to like and subscribe to be here for everything that continues to come out, and I hope to see you then, right here in the Comic Cave.